You're listening to The Kylo Show, the podcast where we talk about how to keep your love on no matter what and why whole healthy families are going to save the world. And it starts right now.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to The Kylo Show.
Ta-da.
Ta-da. We made it back.
We are.
Well, anything exciting happening in your world?
Probably.
Probably.
Probably. What specifically is exciting? I don't know. I'm excited that this is all going so well.
Yeah.
I'm excited that so many people are grabbing onto it and kind of making it part of their functional world.
Their weekly to-do list.
Yeah.
The Kylo
the
Show's
feedback
making
we're
on it.
getting is just fantastic, and watching it
Mhm.
affect homes and couples and singles and people working stuff out, and
Yeah.
people with adult children and adult children dealing with their parents, and it's just fun.
Yeah. It's fun to hear the stories. It's fun to get the messages of, I listened to The Kylo Show. I have a question. I'm normally sending you over to SpeakPipe. If you haven't heard about that, you want to check that out.
Yeah, SpeakPipe.
Which is thekyloshow.com. That's where you submit questions, is through SpeakPipe. I'm
Yeah.
doing a little mini commercial right now.
There you go.
That's how this
Do
is
it.
going.
Yes, that's where all these questions are coming
Mhm.
from, is the SpeakPipe. And I was going to say something, and it's gone.
It's the sound Lincoln makes sometimes.
It'll come back.
Okay. Well, Lincoln, he just got recommended black belt in Taekwondo,
I know.
which is super fun.
It's super fun. He's breaking boards and stuff, and or
Yeah.
not.
Or not.
Or
Oh,
not.
man, the last time. We have a crowd. Every time we go for his testing, there's a crowd, which every single time his instructor mentions it, his crowd section, his cheering section. And this last time, he has 3 tries to break the board, and he's on the 3rd try, and he hasn't done it yet.
The kick.
Oh, that's the kick. It's always the kick.
Yeah.
He kicks it. I stand up in the bleachers, both arms up.
Yes. We all are
Yelling.
cheering.
Yes.
It's like he caught the winning touchdown out there. I know.
Oh, it was a great moment. And then I'm crying, thinking, I'm going to be crying for many years to come. It feels like just so many years to come, I'm going to be crying over these kids.
Yeah, he kicks the board and my foot hurts.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we did it. Yeah.
That's true. Oh, well, we are going to do questions again because
Yay.
we have so many that have been coming in that we want to make sure we get to, especially as we end our first season of the Kylo Show.
It's coming up.
Yeah,
We're TikToking here.
We are so
Like
close.
that countdown.
But yeah, so we're going to jump into questions. And the first one that we have today comes from someone named Aaron.
Aaron.
Hi, Danny and Brittany. I have a question for you both. Where do you most commonly see people misunderstanding and misusing boundaries in relationships, be that with a spouse, a child, close friend, or even in the workplace?
Well, a couple places would be most common. One of them would be not doing it.
Yeah, I was say I don't know that it's a people group as much as it is someone that doesn't do it or isn't used to encountering boundaries. That's where you get a lot of pushback.
Yeah, I think.
So maybe children, because they're the youngest.
Well, they have yet to learn.
Yeah,
but
maybe that's-
I think that when people make excuses to not set boundaries, that's probably the most prevalent one I'm aware of. And then the other one would be rejection. I didn't set a boundary. I just rejected you. You're out of my life. I forgive you. I just hope I never see you again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you use that word. You keep using that word, but I don't think you know. It doesn't mean what you think. It's very much a misapplication of a boundary where I erase all hope of the relationship. I kicked you out of my life, and I called it a boundary. I'm just setting a limit with you. I'm just setting a boundary with you. Like, no, you just rejected this person, and you hope they disappear from your life. Whereas a boundary, a healthy boundary always leaves the hope of reconciliation. There's going to be some adjustments. There's going to be some repentance. There's going to be some conversation. There's going to be some understanding. But I'm open to having our relationship. It may not be where it was,
Yeah.
but I'm not Xing you out of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's understanding the difference between boundaries and punishment. We call it boundaries, and I think that's why a lot of people have such a hard time with the word boundaries, is because they've encountered punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And so to do it with the message of, I have hope for restoration,
Mm-hmm.
but I do have requirements for you to come inside my house.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ones that have gotten hurt because a boundary was just really punishment, it's probably really hard to set a boundary with that person. Or someone that's out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Those are also. So again, I don't know if it's husbands, kids, workplace. I think it's just people. We say that.
I think a common one that I hear about, I mean, I don't know if it's a disproportionate number of that's happening, but it's parents with adult children who are getting a quote boundary set with them by their children, which basically is just an expulsion. Like, I don't want you calling. I don't want you coming over. You don't have access to your grandchildren. You've been toxic my whole life.
Yeah.
You are out. You will never change, blah, blah, blah. And the parent is just sitting out there spinning in pain and rejection.
Yeah.
And, and the adult child is frustrated with the dynamic not changing. So I think that's probably the place where I'm aware it seems to be unsuccessful in the language of a boundary. But I get it. Sometimes it's just, and oftentimes it's religious parents, that have children that have said, no, thank you. I don't want any of this in my life. And the grandparent wants to bring it to the child who doesn't want it. And now there's this, I'm trying to evangelize my grandchildren because and they're like, well, we're trying to protect our children from your crazy religion. Here we go. This is the painful distortion that happens. And they've elevated the issue of religion above connection. And they have a giant disconnect. And until they get the connection going, there'll be no conversation around how faith is going to move in this relationship.
Yeah. Ben and I were in a young adults leadership track thing last week, and we were talking about these very young adult humans, young men and women, and they're trying to figure out how to have a boundary with their parents while they still live in the house, but they're adults. And some of their needs were, very selfish young adults' needs. And some of them were, legitimate. And that's the next phase, but it is a hard tension between the adult child and the parent learning how to give that permission and that dance. So I wonder if that is a dynamic that maybe the boundaries live in with more tension, is how to communicate, how to navigate that, how to not send a rejection message, how to not have all this built up frustration. Maybe if you're teen years, that explodes on your parents as soon as you become 18.
Your skill level in communicating as a young adult typically isn't awesome. Yeah. That's usually where people get married, right there. Which is another really tough place to set boundaries that aren't rejecting and manage that to where, because you get hurt, something happens in your early marriage and you close your heart to this person because of the pain, and then you dwarf your relationship because of that.
Yeah.
And then you get hopeless because you have this dwarfed relationship that you don't see really came from a bunch on your side because you were the victim of whatever.
Yeah.
And so, that all plays into boundaries as well as learning how to mature your love and communicate boundaries and not give up. Just don't give up the process, and you'll end up, one way or another, you'll end up as a mature person. But if you give up, you end up getting dwarfed.
Yeah.
Because of your own bitterness.
I think you need to do a Life Academy course on the how-to of boundaries.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it would do really well.
It's probably a good idea. Yeah.
If you think that's a good idea, you should message me and let me know, and maybe I can put in a word.
There
for
we
you.
go. Let's see if we can't get the old,
help you out.
the old guy doing some new stuff.
All right. The next question we have comes from Deborah.
Hi there. Thank you so much for everything that you've been sharing on this podcast. I'd like to ask, where does the peace of God play a role in a dating relationship where everything in the relationship seems to be good and the person is a believer, but there is just an unrest on the inside of your spirit? How do you go about dealing with that, especially when you really love the person, but you're not quite feeling a sense of peace on the inside, which is not related to fear or anything else like that. It's just an unsettledness. Thank you. I'd appreciate an answer on that.
Wow. I mean, let's just go with that. The way that question was asked, and this is not related to any past injury or past patterns in relationships. There's no fear at all. It's just, I think what she's describing is the Holy Spirit.
That's what I was going to say. I think that is another word for Holy Spirit is guiding you.
Yeah.
And
but classically, that is, I got this really great situation with this really great person. It's going really great. But I have this thing. Well, this thing is called a memory, and the memory is most likely saying, but what if this happens again? That last round almost killed you. You felt like this before.
Yeah.
You can't trust yourself. I mean, there's a bunch of that stuff that is quite possibly at work as well. So let's say that that's not there, that I am all healed up. I've had numerous intimate relationships with other people, not dating relationships, but I have good friends that I'm all in. I know I have healthy soul tie building ability, and I have that in various places. I know what it feels like. I'm not afraid of being betrayed. I'm not afraid of other people's mistakes or cycles. Like some people just kind of do dumb stuff, and you're like, "Wow, what happened?" Like, I'm sorry, I did some dumb stuff. Family members, I have soul ties with family members. I have these places where I know I can experience being all in a relationship, and I'm not holding back because I'm afraid of being hurt. So if you have that going on and you're getting the beep 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 warning
The
then
flag.
pay attention. That's exactly what that's for. That's that you are picking up on something, and hold.
I love talking to my girls about just, as they're in high school and junior high, and the world of poor choices is awaiting them, it feels like, and checking in with their ability to recognize the Holy Spirit kind of tugging on their heart or trying to give them those yellow flags or those slow down or the pause. Because if that practice isn't consistent in your life, it starts to get it feels like you doubt it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's just a thought that I had when she's talking is, it does feel like the Holy Spirit if we take everything off the table.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would be comparing that to other moments where it feels like the Holy Spirit. Because if it's that, then I don't know that you should keep moving forward.
Yeah. Well, you're going to regret it.
Yeah.
If you had that kind of register happening, that conviction, that warning, and then you just plowed right through it, and then it turns out to be true, you're going to be kicking yourself.
Yeah. And that's on the other side of that. It's not fun to live in that kind of consequence of decision. So, but just be checking in with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
That's what I'd be suggesting.
We picked up a lot of new listeners since we launched the Kylo Show, and some of you might not be following Danny and Brittany on social media. And if you're not, you should. You can follow both of them on Instagram and Facebook at Danny Loving on Purpose and at Brittany Serple. If you're not following them, go ahead and do that now.
All right. Next question we have comes to us from Mark.
Hey, Danny and Brittany. My wife and I listen to you guys all the time, and we love you guys. Thanks for all you do. We talk about this a lot, so I'm not dropping any bombs on my marriage via podcast here. But my wife was raised to more often than not take an adversarial or disrespectful tone, and she doesn't realize she's doing it. Do you have any Kylo tips that I can help her get better at this, even when she's had a really bad day with the kids?
Sure, I'm capable of some pretty sassy tones.
I think everybody is, actually.
Yeah, sure. I mean, with Ben, when Ben's disrespectful, it's like Mickey Mouse being disrespectful, okay? It just doesn't exist. He's not very disrespectful in tone. It is, he's not the one that ever struggles with it. And when he does, it's like, what just happened? I actually kind of get excited about it because it never happens.
It's like Reagan getting angry.
That's our dog, our golden retriever. Yeah. So I know that I can be short and rude. It's right there. It's easy for me to find it, compare the two of us. And I know that Ben's response to me has been, hey, I'm not sure what your goal is right now, but that feels hurtful.
Or what'd you hear me say?
Or that was the other one that he says all the time.
Yeah.
So that's been our practice when I'm trying to communicate something. I'm trying to use the tools, but I'm irritated and it's coming out. This the other day. We were in our room and he has so much grace for me, guys. He has so much grace for me. I'm at like an 8 as far as the whole upstairs looks crazy. I walk out my bedroom door. There's just Lincoln snacks, a sweatshirt, a sock, a this, a that, So my need for order and structure and it's losing right now. It's losing bad and we're supposed to go somewhere. Everyone's homework's delayed. So I start bringing all of that to how I'm communicating to Ben about needing some help. And he just looks at me. And now I know that I'm doing that more than ever.
The look.
I'm very aware of his ability to give me a look. And so I just have to take a deep breath and try it again because I'm realizing I'm introducing disrespect and I don't want to at all. But I have to. We've had so much practice of him giving me good information and me catching myself and me managing myself to not bring it in. But it's this, it's just a partnership that, he's done a really good job of giving me good feedback and I'm doing a good job of receiving that feedback and doing something with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the suggestion I would make is, what'd you hear me say? Or, hey, I know you're frustrated, but that feels super painful when it's communicated that way. Because if you just match fire with fire, it doesn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
You end up with 2 dragons.
Yes. Dinosaur wars.
Yeah.
I think as you're talking, I'm thinking about the maturing process between your mom and I around this, how we're going to communicate that we're different.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening, the longer we do this is the more value we have for the connection.
Yeah.
It's just beginning. I mean, it feels like it's hockey sticking right now. It's like, wow. And we are way more careful than we've ever been. And I can see, you know, if your mom's having a rough day with whatever, and she wants to vent, I would just
She wants to
say,
act like Ellie, her cat.
yeah, she goes Vinka on me, you know, then I do give her a look like, and she just starts backpedaling. But it's taken us a while to get to that where we can. But if she gives me that look, you know, and I'm like, okay, I hear me too. So it's the value for the connection has to mature. It just has to mature, and I think that starts altering the permission you give yourself in your variance in your communication, you know, from respectful to disrespectful. It starts tightening up to where you really are, you don't have you don't give yourself permission to go very far into the disrespect, because you can see it on their face. You can see how it's landing.
Yeah.
I'm hurting you.
Yeah.
And and maybe we do that with our children faster because our children's reaction is so unmeasured, you know, like, oh geez, I did that. That was me. I pushed you. I hit you with a hurt or an intimidation, and I lost you. But it is in the same place. We are giving each other feedback with the expression on our faces, and if we'll learn to manage our side of it, we can avoid a whole bunch of it.
Yeah.
He did say that, you know, she has a culture, so there's a pretty wide variance in how far you can go, because people absorb a bunch of disrespect in some families. And so that way of communicating doesn't feel like disrespect because you didn't F-bomb me yet.
Yeah.
But if you F-bomb or you start cussing, okay, that's unacceptable. You're like, wow, no, you said all this other stuff before you ever got to cussing. So that you have to work that out, and you do work it out with feedback. You do work it out with ouch.
Yeah. One of the questions we've asked couples before is, you know, how much disrespect do you want in your relationship? And I don't know if it's a tool you recently introduced Ben to, or if you read it somewhere, but he's been talking about the we always and we never. And maybe that's a tool that they could be using, is just kind of defining their levels of respect and disrespect, and what we always do and what we're never going to do. And casting vision for these things just helps keep the fuel going, and that this fire is, we're protecting it. We want this to burn. We don't want to burn the house down. We want a really nice fire in the fireplace. You know, that's where it's meant to be. And so clarifying where that line is, I think sometimes helps just keep a purpose for what we're doing and what we're protecting.
Absolutely. And it's the whole, you know, family creed, you know, the family
pieces,
culture. It's our agreements. How are we going to conduct ourselves? And, you know, we never blame, accuse, or attack each other when we're upset. We always communicate about ourselves to each other with ownership, responsibility, and respect.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. Like, we would just make a set of always and nevers that we agree to. And we go, okay, yeah, I will hold myself to that agreement.
Yeah.
And you hold yourself to it. And if there's any violations, I'll throw up a flag and say, we have an agreement.
Yeah. We, you know, beginning of the year, as you always do, you kind of have your plan, you're dreaming and all these things. And we were doing that. And Adeline can't help herself. She's always the one that wants to get in on the goals that we're setting, the action steps, the always and the nevers. And so she was writing down her own of, you know, we always and we never. And it's just fun. It's fun to see your kids pull it in when you've been practicing casting vision and protecting it and other ways in your family, and to watch them join in.
She's such a structure girl.
She is. She does love that
She
too.
loves that structure.
Great question, Mark. All right. The next one comes to us from Esther.
What do you do when trust has been broken and you see your spouse trying to build trust, but it still feels like you don't trust them? How do you heal after betrayal in marriage?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
We do have a course that might be helpful.
We do. It's really a beautiful story of the restoration, that comes through keeping your love on and walking. I think it's called From Betrayal to Restoration.
Yeah.
But it is. It's a story. I've used Ben and Heather's story a number of times. But it has a lot to do with the courage of truthing each other, and the skill of truthing. Because if I'm not telling you the truth, I promise you I won't trust you.
That's a hard statement.
And it's so when you tell me that you don't trust someone, you just told me that you don't truth someone. You're holding back what you feel. You're holding back your experience of them. You're holding back really good information in the relationship because you don't believe that they will value it or protect it, and you're protecting yourself, which is part of the truth they need to experience. They need to know that I don't believe that you're going to protect me if I'm vulnerable with you. And they say, how do I fix that? Say, well, I don't know. How did you break that? And they'll say, I got on those porn sites again. I've been masturbating to porn, even though we were connected. I didn't protect you. That kind of truth. This is truthing right here. This is like, most people are like, turn it down. The kids are in the car. I can't believe we're talking like this right now. But this is very much truthing.
Yeah.
Like I'm not blaming you. I'm telling you what's going on inside of me, that I am experiencing you. And I have work to do over here, but I am afraid you will not protect me.
That courage to truth someone is more terrifying, and it's so much easier to say, I just don't trust you.
Yeah.
And to stay, and you have to prove that I can trust you again.
Or to say, no, nothing's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
No, I'm fine.
Uh-huh.
You seem distant. No, I'm good.
Oh, you're wearing an iceberg on you, but you're doing fine. And that, I have a lot of those conversations is I just don't trust them. I just don't trust them. And it's I am terrified to be honest and actually tell. And sometimes it's, I don't want to be hurtful in this truth, because this truth is so painful that I'm going to maybe crush you with it. And so I don't want to tell you that truth. And my personality is like, I'll tell you this truth. I have to be not punishing with my.
Well, yeah, and truthing isn't judging.
Yeah.
And truthing isn't rejecting, and truthing isn't punishing. Truthing is exposing me, being authentic, being vulnerable. I mean, that's truthing. That's what people don't want to do, but that's how you build trust. And I'm not going to trust anybody if I'm not willing to truth them.
Which is a really big step, especially if you're not used to that practice.
Yeah, and a lot of us are not used to that practice. So it's growth, it's courage, and there's a commitment to having intimate, trusting relationships.
Yeah. Guys, there's another course I'm going to try and get him to do is how to tell the truth in love.
Truthing.
This is a productive podcast. We're just coming up with all sorts of ideas of new things that we could be putting out there. All right. Good question, Esther. So the next one that we have comes to us from Hannah.
Hi, my boyfriend and I, we are both 23 years old, and we love each other very much, but there are too many places that I feel like he still needs to grow up in. And now, because I really love him, I don't want to just leave the relationship, but at the same time, staying with him and having to patiently deal with all the problems are very exhausting. For example, he is very short-tempered, and his family struggles with anger. Even though he's not physically violent, but he can be a little bit emotionally violent. Like he would blame me or say things like, well, if you did this, then I wouldn't be angry, then I wouldn't do this and do that. And so I'm asking for advice what I can do and how to draw a healthy boundary, because whenever I'm trying my best to draw a boundary, I'm kind of physically leaving the place and he gets hurt by that. So, yes, thank you very much.
That doesn't sound like any fun at all.
No.
And at 23, both of you have a lot of growing to do, a lot of maturing to do, a lot of changing to do. So it's a little, but she's basically pointing out there are unacceptable levels of
disrespect,
injury coming when you are upset.
Yeah.
And so got it. That's brilliant on her part to identify that. I love you. I want to be with you. And every time you do that, I have to protect myself from you. That's not great. And that's not going to be a future that anybody wants to live in. Hopefully she's truthing him, like that, like we were just talking about. And I hope they find a community of people that they can draw strength and maturity from, and they're not doing this on their own.
Yeah.
Because it takes way longer by yourself.
Yes.
But if you can plug into a group of people that share your goal of healthy relationships and hopefully tap into some maturity, like people further down the road, like get around some married people that are doing a good job. Get around some people that have maybe climbed out of a similar hole and apply and learn how to get feedback, learn how to let someone put eyes on you, your life, your character, your relationship, and draw strength from that.
And one of the pieces she said is that often it's her leaving the room and he finds that hurtful, which I get, especially, it sounds like his upbringing, that is how we communicate. So potentially he thinks that he's trying to communicate. But I would continue to suggest that that's what she do, which the powerful language is, I would love to have this conversation and stay in this room if you're going to be respectful. But currently it's super painful. So I'm going to go into the other room. Let me know when you're ready. The message of hope, I want to have this conversation. I want to do this. I don't want to do it like this. Here's my boundary. When you don't do these things with community, what I have watched is your standard for what your boundary is starts to lower. You get worn out by constantly setting this boundary. And so often you end up in, I stay in the room now because he's convinced me that I'm an evil person if I leave.
He makes it worse when I leave.
And so paying attention to that community aspect, because if you are doing it on your own, you are, it feels like you're setting yourself up for this potential to be consumed by this person trying to convince you that he controls you or she controls you. And this is where, don't get married right now. Please don't get married. Don't say yes to engagement. Just don't do it right now. Just get some more momentum and help, because otherwise you'll be on the other side of this.
With a child.
Yeah. And a lot more pain than you have ever thought you could experience, even in what you're in right now. And that's, not having community and doing it by yourself. You just isolate, and it is dangerous. That's so hard to watch.
Yeah, and it's the willful leads, the willful culture leads, and in this case, in a family system, if you discover that anger and rage and intimidation is how you feel powerful, when you feel powerless, when you feel hurt or scared, rage and anger is survival. And so you will shape your next environment with that very thing. This is little toddlers. You watch little children begin to experiment with what comes natural to them. Some kids just disappear in passivity and get their needs met through withdrawal, and some kids come over the counter at their parents, rah, and maybe that is really, Winnie the Pooh parents that are just like, oh my god, oh my god,
that's the truth.
so this kid rules the roost.
Yeah, it's.
And then they go on to find Winnie the Pooh and marry him and continue.
Yeah, I would think, Hannah, a good question for you is, how long do you want to keep participating in this cycle if someone is unwilling to change? You're 23, you're very young, and it's not your job to fix him.
Yeah.
It's your job to do a good job with the value of who you are and being a powerful person. So she said many times she loves him,
which is great,
is
but
great.
she better be truth in him. She better
That's a
be
big
truth
part.
in him and let him know that, it's not my job to protect me from your anger.
Yeah.
It's your job to protect me from your anger.
Yeah. So hold on to that.
If you love Danny and Brittany on The Kylo Show, you'll love them on social media as well. You'll see clips and quotes from the show, as well as get a peek into their lives. Go follow Danny at Danny Loving on Purpose and follow Brittany at Brittany Circle. Go do that now.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump into our testimony, which is coming to us from Rusty. I don't know if it's the Rusty we know, but it's a Rusty.
Okay.
Hey, Danny. Hey, Brittany.
It is.
I appreciate y'all inviting me on to talk about one of my absolute favorite subjects, keep your love on, and the loving on purpose principles. I know it sounds a little cliche, but principles that have changed my life. So my journey with Keep Your Love On and the principles started about 7 years ago. 7 years ago, my best friend introduced me to the book Keep Your Love On. I read it, consumed it, then read it again, and then probably read it a couple more times, just soaked it up. And it came at a time where it was, it's needed at any season of life, but for us, it came at a really, really important time. At that time, we had 2 teenage daughters that we were losing connection with. We were losing. They were struggling. We were struggling in our relationship. And just a little bit of background is Erin and I, my wife and I, are first-generation Christians. So we're trying to raise 2 daughters, not having a clue how to do that from a Christian perspective. And so the materials that were brought into our life, although there were some good things, obviously, there was really a focus on obedience. And it's so interesting how that can easily get out of balance, and it certainly got out of balance in our home. Our hearts were to do the best job for our girls, to raise them right, obviously. But the experience that our daughters had for most of their life was our love was conditional. In other words, you do these things and don't do these things, we're good. But as soon as you make a mistake, we are probably going to withdraw our love and you're probably going to get punished. Again, our hearts were in the right place, but our method definitely needed some improvement. So when we read Keep Your Love On, we knew it was truth. We're like, this is it. This is the answer. So we started applying it in our marriage. Then we started applying it in our family. And this is kind of what I wanted to highlight. And I just wanted to bring some hope to some parents out there that might think, is it too late? Is it too late? Well, my girls were 19 and 15 at the time. And I can tell you today, our relationship with them is never better. But when Keep Your Love On first came into our life, it was at a low point. So we sat our girls down and had a little meeting. We made a decision that day. Sat them down, apologized for sending a message of conditional love, cleaned up our mess, asked them to forgive us. And then I looked right at them and I said, I'm making you a promise. From this day forward, we're doing a new thing in this family. We're going after connection, and specifically we're going after connection with you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And they looked at me like I was nuts, and in their defense, they had no reason, no history to believe what I was saying was true. I was going to have to prove it over time. But Aaron and I really, really were intentional to implement these principles in our culture to make a true culture change. So again, I want to bring hope to those out there that might think it's too late. I promise you, it is not too late. Our relationship with our girls today is better than ever. And there is no doubt in my mind that's because we changed the culture that day. We made a decision that we were going to do something different. We were going to pursue their hearts and connection and get out of the punishment paradigm. And I'm so, so grateful for these principles. Thank y'all for what you're doing. Keep it up. Take care.
Ba-dum-bum.
Yep, that's our Rusty.
There he is.
It's I know their younger daughter, Emma.
Mm-hmm.
She's the youth pastor for junior high at JC, and
she's a hoot.
She is funny. She
She's a
does
funny
our
girl.
video announcements as well. She's got her dad's sense of humor. They are funny people. But I've watched her grow so much in coming here, and it's such a testimony to what I know of their story even more.
Mm-hmm.
How much she's come to own the tools, and activate and live in them. And
wow, because she was not a fan.
No, not so much.
Not so much.
And just, she came through the school leadership with Ben and trying to figure out what she's going to do. And then she just kept being part of the culture and part of the value system and got hired and is doing a great job loving these kids and teaching them to be powerful. She's in a big situation right now that we're all involved in. And I'm watching her ask good questions, and I'm, watching her lean into leaders going, okay, help me, give me feedback. And it's just so fun to watch and hear. And I know so much of that is she's gotten from, getting at 15 with her parents. And
interesting part of this story that I learned recently was that the first book they ran into was Loving Our Kids.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And thought it was crazy. They're like, oh no, we're out. We're out of here. Circled back around to Keep Your Love On, and I'm surprised they read it.
I would say that they gave you a second chance.
But they did, and because they did, they went on to other things, and now they're just some of our great partners.
Yeah.
In
family coaching, helping out with that.
The name of their ministry.
Oh, Make a Way.
Make a Way Marriage.
Making a Way Marriage.
Making a Way Marriage.
Yes.
I was going to say something else.
I was trying to read your mind. I couldn't find it.
I'm trying to send you.
It's not working. Our antennas, we need to update them. Oh, yes.
Makingawaymarriage.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Rusty and Aaron.
we've got them on our coaching platform as well.
Yeah.
And trying to empower them as much as we can and as much as they can handle and do. So they're great options
Mm-hmm.
and great people.
Yep. Super helpful.
Fun. And they're doing a good job of, helping us and helping families to get whole and healthy and saving Louisiana. Let's go there, down there. And we just
whole healthy families are going to save Louisiana
and the rest of the world as well.
So good.
So that's awesome. Well, always love the questions that we get. Super fun.
Yep.
And thanks so much for joining us on this week's Kylo Show.
Thanks for listening. Never miss an episode of The Kylo Show by subscribing to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch us on the Loving on Purpose YouTube channel. Don't forget to submit your questions and testimonies to thekyloshow.com. The Kylo Show is produced by Ali Armerding, co-produced by Ashley Beck and Anna Hill, sound engineered and edited by Taylor Silk, and show promoter Christian Zamora. Don't forget, whole healthy families, gonna save the world.